Moscow. Must be late from the south. I'm the one they call me Sam But in a clever sort of way, this music could be working, waiting, learning, and planning. Hey, I can heal the sick and raise the dead.
Are you still with me? This is Animal Songs, a story set to music, written and performed by Jamie Holcomb. Well, she got me. I should have known that this tangled web would extend farther. She's trying to make me look foolish. The spider chapter is not quite concluded. I do try so hard to avoid mistakes. Just sit back, relax, and watch the show. In your head, on screen, through the dots of your own eyes. Invisible, traps, prepared, everywhere. It waits. Fate. Spider. On a wooden platform overlooking the cold river, Violet, Warshaw, Tangi, and Peter sat in a line, each of them holding a simple bamboo fishing rod. A burly man in a torn, knitted sweater of black wool stood on the end, contemplating the group. He had dark hair, a thick, ungroomed mustache, and a bed of stubble across his heavy jowls. He scrutinized Violet's bat wings, and he said to Peter, "So you all met out there?" Peter explained the experience of the wasteland while he simultaneously instructed Tangi how to hold the rod because she kept dunking the pink worm in and out of the water. "And what's his story?" the man asked, indicating the chimera. "I'm special," said Violet. He spat into the waves, and then his eyes went wide. His line pulled taut. Violet was on his feet, tugging at the rod. "Pull her in," cried the fat man. The rod was curled all the way around, almost into a circle. The man clumped along the planks, and he grabbed hold of Violet's hands. Together they cranked the reel. A tremendous fish flapped out of the water, red-bellied and green-backed, with an iridescent rainbow gleaming on his skin in the sunlight. Everyone was laughing and admiring the great fish when the first drops of rain began to fall. That is how my quest for Torchlight ended. The book was just another trick by the Mad Wizard, wasn't it? I was his plaything. It was through the power and strength of my own subtle mind that I had discovered his rooms unguarded. That maniac was no teacher, and I was certainly not his student. Yes, I was a thief, but one of noble character. The power of transformation would be mine to control. She would help me. Her voice stayed with me even after I returned, though she was always speaking from a distance so that I only caught fragments and random words. If I was contemplating the wheel, wondering what symbol to investigate next, I might hear an echoing on the left, and she would point my eyes in the right direction. With her help, after just 10 days, I completed the compass. At one point, I had procured a large dry erase board, which now hung on a wall beside my mattress. Using a thick black marker, I filled in the shapes on the board so that I had my own dominating sign. Still, I could not unleash its magic. "I'm sure it's correct," I whispered into my fist. She responded with snippets of verse, a long-forgotten lullaby. "Now I lay me down," she called, "to sleep, to sleep." I would have to investigate the rest of the lines to understand just what she meant. On the other side of things, I was spending less time with Peter. We'd cross paths occasionally in the kitchen, and our brief exchanges were cordial. Something had been lost. Despite every whisper to the contrary, one morning, a Saturday, I heard Peter making cereal in the kitchen, and I walked down the hall and invited him to see my creation. "I'm sorry I take it so seriously," I said, while he stood before the whiteboard scratching his head. "You know, I see." He wouldn't look at me. His eyes bounced between the incomprehensible board and the floor. "Well, what do you think?" He turned his body towards me, but his head he kept pointed downwards. "Are you sure you want me to tell you?" I could sense his revenge. My curiosity got the better of me. "You're spending too much time alone," he said. He showed me the door. I spoke to her through my balled fist. "One day, you will all understand." When I look upon these events today, from the vantage point of my distant rocking chair, a number of things are clearly visible. The thudding voice in my chest is so powerful, it disturbs my once blissful solitude, but it prevents me quite completely from hearing her. These things must be done. The birdsong I won't begin to contemplate for some time. My friends will help me to read those notes. My friends. The cat is yowling. The fisherman's name was Frederick Hump, and he lived down a lane perpendicular to the riverbank. When the storm started, given the tasty bass they had acquired, it was only right that Mr. Hump should invite the strange quartet into his home out of the storm, where they could all enjoy their catch. The house was like any other in the town, a white plaster box with a copper shingled roof. Inside, the sturdy cedar skeleton was exposed. The walls, floor, and ceiling were rows of planks that smelled like the forest. It was Violet who noticed the peculiar feature first, and he was halfway through his question about the lack of plaster on the inside when he was answered by a scream. A broom handle struck him on the cheek, and he stumbled back against the door. Mrs. Hump, round, broomed, and furious, charged through the other guests at the unfortunate chimera. "No animals in the house!" She beat his shoulders, and everyone winced for him as they heard the crunch of his brittle wings. "My boy!" he cried, and he curled into a ball against the door. "Dear God, and it talks," said Mrs. Hump. She rolled up the sleeves of her knitted sweater and stalked towards the huddled creature on her threshold. Again she raised her broom, but her husband caught the handle in time. He told her the story while Tangi and Peter helped Violet to stand. His face was streaked with tears, and he was sniffling. "I'm the one who caught it," he said. Frederick held up the bass for his wife to see. She scrutinized Violet, and finally she resigned herself to a headshake. "Just make sure it does its business outside." Violet buried his face in his hands. Despite Tangi and Peter's reassuring pats on his back, he was inconsolable. Warshaw had already seated himself at the rectangular table that dominated the left side of the house, and he was shaking his head at the scene too, for his own reasons. He slipped a hand into his suit jacket and produced a silver case, etched with floral patterns. The glint caught Mrs. Hump's eye. "Madam, smoking is permitted?" She looked from the case to Warshaw's suit, stained but quite finely tailored, a birthday gift from his ersatz mentor years before. "Of course, sir," said Mrs. Hump, and her eyes returned to the ornate cigarette case. "As you please, and call me Frida." The rain beat the copper roof in harsh metallic chimes. Warshaw lit a cigarette on the lantern hanging above the table. After he'd cleaned the scales, Mr. Hump laid the great bass on the table and split it in two. His crescent moon dagger was dull iron, and the blade was riddled with small nicks from years of cutting. Seated across from one another on either side of the carver, Warshaw and Tangi each contemplated the slicing dagger in different ways. Tangi's golden eyes were wide with wonder as the crescent totem wrought its blood magic, transforming death through pain into life. She more or less communicated this message through occasional applause, though her own claps startled her, and she would turn from her hands, looking at them as if they were acting on their own, to the window where the rain splattered. Warshaw watched the fisherman dig out the brittle bones of the bass, and the gentleman's face turned ever-deepening shades of green. Peter, sitting on his left, tapped the gentleman and said, "Don't like the fish, Mr. Warshaw? This is reminding me of many stories." Behind her husband, Frida was busy stirring a cauldron of root vegetables in the hearth. "Regale us, if you please, sir," she said. "We don't find ourselves reading much down at the docks." "It's not a most pleasant story, madam." But now all eyes were on the foreigner. Even Violet looked up from the corner where he was still sniffling. "Very well," said Warshaw. "Once, beneath the waves, there lived a fish, and he was regrettably small. That is, he regretted his dwarfism, though, as any fisherman may tell you, to be small is to be worthless to hunters, human or animal, and too quick and nimble for nature's other snares. Nevertheless, he regretted what he was. Don't we all?" said Violet. Tangi pounded her fists on the table, laughing. "He ate all the kelp in abundance, but to no avail. He grew not an inch and had almost excruciating bowel movements." "Oh, Mr. Warshaw," said Frida, blushing. She waved a hand at the incorrigible raconteur. "He followed the whales to the surface to see what magic blew in the air they breathed, but of course he was a fish, and as such he had no success finding breath out of water." Mr. Hump laughed and nodded at this tidbit while he sliced the bass into fine fillets. "Finally," Warshaw said, "with no other recourse he turned to higher forces, and it was the storyteller who first noticed the water seeping under the door." The way to work the wizard's compass is simple. All you need to do is read it. The trick lies in the definition of that verb. You must adjust your interpretation of read. In the ordinary world of day-dwelling citizens, reading is a peculiar activity associated with the mind. Symbols representing sounds are deciphered by a well-educated person so that they may understand a message communicated verbally. The dead scratches on a signpost speak. Yet, as anyone who has ever taken the wheel of a vehicle or at least paid attention to the passing signage may well tell you, the letters are the last word communicated to the river-reading pilot. red hexagons and yellow triangles, green, red, and yellow lights scream. Even louder are the blinking signals of the rear-facing eyes on the two-faced robot in the next lane. This, that, and the other each make themselves perfectly legible in the Book of Life. When reading a system of rooms as highly abstract as the compass, their ambiguity implies, to the well-educated scholar, a kind of complexity that will require deep brow furrows to make an impression on the brain. An archaeologist who once came across a yogic manual of similar meaning spent 10 years bent over the ornate squiggles before he finally changed positions and understood. To read the meandering zodiac, an aspiring Nagual must approach it from every angle, letting his entire body do the talking, so to speak. Now you see here that the wheel is composed of 4 layers. At the center stands what I have called the master symbol, I-O. That's easy enough to read in ordinary language, but understanding its implications would be a task for generations of monks to decipher, and only a Zen master could attempt to explain it, and then only in unclear terms. That the rest of the wheel addresses the implications of I-O in increasingly specific terms is an intuitive guess, as it is the only explanation for the arrangement of the artifact. So, understand the wheel, understand I-O. The next level is the color wheel, about which that infuriating codger has at least given us a clue. Red, blue, green, and yellow. It's a smell organ. Sage, my memory from India. And those invisible light-casting sparkles I told you about. I'll admit, I've been a bit stymied as to how these threads should be knitted together. It's particularly difficult when you keep doubting whether or not the trickster has provided clues or absurd red herrings, which stink so strongly you're bound to investigate them just to clear the air. Yet I am beginning to see that his use of smell is akin to my use of reed. His inorganic organ is representative of the ever-elongating nose. Like the ears, it never stops growing. Perhaps the colors will make things more clear. As you have kindly indicated, there is a parallel between this quadrant rainbow and the Navajo pattern of creation: black, white, blue, yellow. Thank you for your interpretation. Out of nothing, something, the world, the sun. Scientifically speaking, the last 2 pieces are backwards, but as the representative of life and growth, that yellow is in the correct spot, which then darkens, dies, only to be reborn and redevelop, as I have done at least once, God knows. But what about these colors? Red, blue, green, yellow. Yes, you're telling me there's something cyclical in the works, but permit me a logical supposition. If the wheel itself is a description of the symbol at its center, then clearly the symbol at its center is a description of the wheel. My God, I am good. 4 layers, 4 colors. What is red? What is blue? What is Chinese? What are the stars? Am I only assuming you start reading at the top going clockwise? My Western mind has a strong rightward inclination. What I can at least tell you is that possibly these 4 colors each represent a layer of the wheel, or each ring is evocative of... I see. Yes, the dots are fundamental. I see. I am. Red, blue, green, yellow. Shut your eyes and see. Following this directive, I found myself at night. Or more accurately, I found myself as night. A star-speckled sky enclosed me, myself, though I was nowhere to be seen. In my mind, behind this starry sky, the wheel turned. She spun the enclosing circles. In my heart I felt my desire burn, transform. My teeth clenched, my chest tightened. The rings spun, and I began to force their shape. I read the blurring color wheel. The characters and constellations smeared into place. Rocks, trees, and plaster buildings appeared. I was dreaming, but I was awake. Out of the clouds I descended. The wind rushed through my hair, all along my back. I was here. My arms, white, scaly, with golden claws. My canine snout extended before me, golden whiskers flowing. I felt the length of my body, swimming through the sky. Below me, human-shaped blots scurried through the streets of a town beside a river. I was enormous, flowing and stretching above that trickling water. I laughed at it. Thunder exploded. Rain flourished from my body. Oh, this is incredible, I thought. Or did she say that? I rolled over and did backstrokes, letting the water flow. A knock opened my eyes. The bedroom door was ajar. There stood Peter, aghast. What are you doing? In the back of my mind, from a great distance, she laughed. Your eyes, he said, taking a step backward. Your teeth. I rose. Go on, I said with a growling voice I did not recognize. I'm listening. She whispered in my right ear. And in one pink burst, I devoured my friend's heart. Peter left the city. He was a fantastic harpist. After the water overfed the river and it broke the bank, after the lanes perpendicular to the docks were subsumed in the engorged flow, after the heroes in the humps, waist deep in black water, waded up the hill to the edge of the valley, it was Tangi who insisted that they go back into town. Only the 6 of them stood on the edge of the valley, where were the townsfolk, and here each of the companions made a choice. Warshaw sat on the grassy hill under that purple sky. He slipped his hand into his coat, removed his silver case and a matchbox, and he attempted to light a cigarette in the downpour. He rolled his hand and shrugged and made an allusion to boats down below. Mrs. Hump agreed with the gentleman. They were safe, and for each his own. The water was rising, and already the houses closest to the river had become dull copper islands. Without a word, Tangi raced down the hill. Naturally, Peter followed. Mr. Hump charged Warshaw with the care of his wife, mumbled something about neighbors, and trudged after the group, with Violet following silently, though he did glance back at the scowling Frida Hump and shuddered. The gentleman and the fishwife sat together on the muddy hill, soaking in the downpour. What was to be done? Warshaw joked. Together they hoped for their friend's safety, and they chided their foolishness, and they grew more worried with every raindrop. The coffer roofs disappeared, and so did the bodies of the higher houses, and then their roofs. Where can they be? The 2 watchers sat together, and they clasped hands as the town slowly disappeared. Above them, the clouds exploded, and for whatever reason, it was Pinocchio seen Warshaw of Piro Bay, erstwhile attendant of the shrine of Crispin, who tilted his head over his shoulder and saw, through a sheet of water, the cause of the storm. In every doorway, beneath shaking lanterns, ruddy faces scrutinized the rising water. It had rained before. They had all waded through an occasional flood. In the plastered doorways, scrunched faces turned away from the girl and the urchin and the monster. "Please," explained the burly, mustached fisherman, "you don't even need to understand. At least, just walk, just up the path." Ruddy faces shook beneath their dwindling lamplight. They closed the doors on the strangers. They had been through a storm before. Then the rain fell harder, and Mr. Hump found boats. Crying mothers, babies in their arms, waist deep in water, waded towards the vessels. Lightning crashed. The rain fell harder. Around the corner, the rag boy met his childhood companions in a dusty brick building. 100 green eyes in the darkness, like frightened mice. "Let's go," he said. "The boats are waiting. The hill, just up there." They shook their heads in the darkness. "We're..." And a thunderclap cut off their explanation. Hat pulled low, the girl ran to every door, kicking the wood with her small pointed foot. The special boy followed her, and his kicks were louder, but no one answered because they were huddled inside in fear of strange noises. As the water rose, Tangi turned back to her companion and said, smiling, "One of the things you'll learn," and it happened just then. A ball of water rolled down the street. Violet saw, but Tangi's head was turned. He saw, and instinct directed his sidestep. He saw her get struck by an impossible orb of water. Gasping, he turned and saw the incredible girl swept down the lane into the engorged river. He didn't see the serpentine shadows scurry through the street. He ran, hoofs clattering on the cobblestones, eyes blinded by the intensifying raindrops, falling so fat and fast that Violet was practically swimming through the downpour. "If these legs are good for anything," he said through gritted teeth, and he pushed those animal appendages at a full gallop towards the floating dark felt hat. He sank his hands beneath it, and he pulled up only water. Hat in hand, he scanned the flood. There, a dark head bobbed. Her hand disappeared in the roaring current. Violet leapt. From Copper Island to Copper Island he sprang, his hoofs banging metallic furor in his wake. There, the dark head, the hand, he grabbed and pulled. The current was mighty. She slipped through his fingers. He sprang island to island, lightning exploding behind him. "Come on, you legs." He ran after, ahead of the bobbing girl as she gasped for air. Now she floated towards him. Violet grinned a corsair sneer and caught her hand. He smiled maniacally and pulled. The current fought against him. That serpentine shadow slithered in the waters, spinning a hungry whirlpool. Violet's tiny wings beat. "Fly, you bastards," he said to the vestigial nubs. The bat wings beat the air. Violet pulled. "Just fly away from here." For an instant he saw Tangi's face above the water. For whatever reason, she was smiling. Then she slipped through his fingers and disappeared into the whirlpool. Turning now, Violet, too, saw the cause. Warshaw and Frida watched the valley fill like a bowl of soup. The ground turned to slick mud beneath them, and step by step they retreated into the wasteland, which was now a muddy frontier. "We have to," Frida tugged the man's arm. He was still staring at the sky, pale eyes wide, his face gaunt. "We have to get away from here," Frida sobbed. She looked across the drowned valley for any sign of her husband, and she recoiled at the flotsam. Pale forms drifted across the new lake. Frida buried her face in Warshaw's chest. He just stared at the sky and his mouth worked, forming silent shapes. A voice called out of the darkness. It took a few dull cries before the two spectators turned their gazes to the horizon. A black form approached. Verderick Hump manned the oars of a small vessel. There was a large huddled form in the center of the craft. The fisherman cried out and his wife ran to him. She leapt into the boat. Warshaw searched the clouds until an oar brushed his leg, and then he tumbled onto the bench beside the oarsman. In the center of the boat was a black tarp, which raised to invite the new passengers. Underneath it were two women in striped dresses, each wearing a turban on her head, and each with a child, one newborn and one young girl, each child seated on its mother's lap. Behind the women hunched Violet and Peter. "Where's the girl?" said Frida. Her eyes fell on the hat in Violet's hands. She poked her head out of the tarp and called to Frederick, "Where will we go?" He had let the oars stop, and he was busy bailing water with an old yellow bucket. He shook his head. His lips trembled. Frida tugged the bucket from his hands and took over bailing. "We've got to go somewhere." "Tangy would know," mumbled Peter. Violet cringed and squeezed the hat brim tightly. "Where will we go?" the mothers repeated. Both children were crying. Now Warshaw spoke. "There is a land to the east." "That's so far," said Peter. "How will we eat?" said the mother with the girl. "Tangy would know," said Violet. "The sea is full of fish," said Warshaw. Then, to everyone's amazement, the foreigner started to laugh. "Stop that," said Frida, and she slapped him right across the cheek. Warshaw fell silent and turned away, rubbing the red streak on his face. "The girl," he said. He shook his head. "That marvelous girl." He lowered his hand, and now he curled it into a tight fist, a novel gesture for the scholar. He hammered down on his own knee and looked into the eyes of Peter, then Violet, then each of the mothers, and finally Frida. "The world," he began, but then he broke off. "There are some things best left unsaid. We will go to Piro Bay." "Why?" said Peter. "What's the use?" He was thinking of those green eyes in the darkness, now far beneath the waves. And Pinocchio seen Warshaw told his crew his tale, and he told them what he had seen in the clouds. Violet perked up. He had seen it too. "All we want is to survive," said one of the mothers, to which the other agreed. "And survive you have," said Warshaw, "for a purpose. Oh, it's all so clear to me now. It's just like it has happened in countless tales, my good madams. You have survived. We have fled the ruined city with the secret of its destruction. My friends, our lives have a purpose." Frida bailed water and shook her head. She rolled her eyes at her husband, but he wasn't paying attention. Verderick Hump dutifully pulled the oars and steered the craft out of danger, and his wife's heart glowed for him. "Go east," she called to the man. He nodded and tugged his starboard arm, turning the boat. "That'll give him something to do," she muttered to herself, but she smiled secretly and went on filling the yellow bucket. "My friend," said Warshaw, "I believe we could save the world." The company was still unclear on exactly what the scholar was blathering about, but Violet and Peter nodded, and even the children stopped crying so much. Such is the force of a few brave words in a dark world. The little craft steered to the east, under the black sky, out onto the vast ocean. The lightning flickered in the clouds, golden, bearded by gray billows. The sky was alive. The thunder chuckled. A little moonlight shone through. This has been Animal Songs, written and performed by Jamie Holcomb, produced by Supermoon. Find us on TikTok, YouTube, or at our website, gosupermoon.com. That's GOSUPERMOON.com. You can also find our work alongside many other talented artists at Look Sees. look-sees.com. That's LOOK-SEES.com. This, finally and truly, does conclude the Spider chapter. I wonder what spirit we will meet next. Until then, thank you for listening.
All I got to say is, glory be. The funk's on me. I want to tell you what you do.